For today's lesson, we're going to finish up the lesson we started the other day, and we will now create the lines that would be generated from our linear equations. So in our previous lesson, this was one of our examples. The width of a rectangular tank is 2 meters less than its length. And we wrote the equation Q equals P minus 2, and we were able to generate the table of values. So now we want to move on to part B, which is to use the data from part A, which is our table of values, to plot the points on a coordinate plane. So we use the table of values as a set of ordered pairs. And what we want to do is use those ordered pairs to plot points onto the coordinate plane, and then from there we will create a line. Now in this situation, we can use our coordinate plane as is. We don't need to make any adjustments to our x or y axis, and everything will fit on there. So if we look back at our table of values, which you should have in your notes from the previous lesson, so you can look off of that. But our first ordered pair was 3, 1, because when the length was 3, the width would be 1. So we would plot that on our coordinate plane by starting at our origin and going 3 to the right and then 1 up for our first point. Then the next one, if you look at the table of values, our next ordered pair would be 4, 2. So we go to the right 4 and up 2. When you're plotting the points, you want to make sure you plot at least 3. This way you can ensure that all the points are on a line. Because if one of those points is in the wrong location, the next one will tell you whether or not all your points are going to be on the same line. So our next ordered pair is 5, 3. So we'd go to the right 5, up 3, and we do in fact have all of our points on the same line. So once we plot our third point, we could go ahead and plot the other ones if we wanted to, but we don't have to. Once we have a minimum of 3, we're good. From there, we do want to create a line, and you need to make sure that your line does in fact intersect the x-axis, y-axis, or the origin. In this case, it would hit our x-axis, and we'd start there and we'd go through those 3 points, and that line's pretty straight. We could continue all the way through the coordinate plane and draw it up to the corner, or to show that the line continues in this direction infinitely, we would put an arrow on the end. And if we take it all the way through the coordinate grid, we should also put an arrow on the side as well. So here's a new problem, one that we did not do in the previous lesson. But so here we have a table of values, and from our table of values we want to create an equation. So if we look at our first set of pairs, we have 1 and 50. Well, there's 2 ways that a change can occur where you'd go from 1 to 50. And one of them is you would add 49, and the other is that you would multiply by 50. Now only one of those patterns is going to continue throughout the table. And so if we look at our next set of ordered pairs of 2 and 100, well, if we add 49 to 2, we are not going to get 100, so that eliminates that possibility. But 2 times 50 is 100. And if it would continue, 3 times 50 is 150, 4 times 50 is 200, and so on. So if we wanted to write our equation, D, since that's the bottom part of the table, that is our dependent variable, so that'll be all by itself, is equal to the operation that we're doing is multiplication, and we're multiplying that by t. So our equation is D equals 50t. So now when we go to plot our points on the coordinate plane, we do need to make a slight adjustment to our y-axis, and the scale for the y-axis is not going to work as it is. Because with no labels, we assume that the values on the y-axis go up by 1. So if we want to change the scale, we can. You just need to label what your scale is. Okay? And since we're going up by 50, that would be a good scale to use. And when you label your y-axis, you don't have to label every single line. You can do every other. So we start at the origin. The origin would be 0. The first line up would be 50. So the second line up would be 100. And you should at least label that. Now, if you wanted to label the first one as 50, that's fine as well. Next one up would be 150, followed by 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500, and 550, 600. And you should go all the way to the top. Don't just stop in the middle or stop when you've used all of your values. So if I were to plot my points on the coordinate grid, my first order pair is 150. So I'd go to the right one, and I would actually only go up one because that one is worth 50. And my next order pair would be 2, 100. So I go to the right 2, and then I would go up 2 because that would be 100. Again, you want to put at least 3 points on your coordinate plane. So I go to the right 3 and up 50, 100, 100, 50. And they are all on the same line. So that tells me that I do have a line. In this case, our line should intersect the origin, and I need to make sure that I've put my arrow on the end. Well, maybe you decide to do a different scale for your y-axis, which is perfectly fine. You don't have to go up by 50s. Maybe you decide to go up by 25. So your scale would be labeled with 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and 300. Now, if you do a different scale, your graph is going to look a little bit different, and that's okay. They don't all have to look the same. It just depends on how you want to space them out. So again, my first order pair is 150, which would adjust my first point to right here. Next would be 2, 100, which would adjust it here. And then 3, 150 would be here. Once again, they're all on the same line. Start at the origin, extend out, and put your arrow on the end. And that is today's lesson. As always, I hope this helps.